The arrival of the human. The ship landed in silence. It was a heavy metal beast, black and scarred from old battles. Dust blew around it as the engines cooled. The elite female unit stood in formation, eyes sharp, back straight. They had never seen the ship before, and none of them liked surprises. Captain Sale stepped forward. She was tall, with silver skin and sharp eyes. Her voice was calm, but her soldiers could feel the tension in the air. "Whoever comes out," she said, "stay ready." The ship's door opened with a slow hiss. From the shadows, a man walked out. A human. He was not large. He didn't wear the kind of armor they were used to. No shining metals. No heavy weapons. Just plain black gear, a backpack, and a calm face. His eyes scanned them quickly, but not with fear, with quiet understanding. The soldiers whispered, "Is this a joke?" They sent him. Why would High Command give us a male human? No male had ever been part of their squad. The Crimson Daughters were known across the galaxy as the deadliest female unit ever formed. They had fought in 6 major wars. Their training crushed normal beings in the first week. Even Xel had once broken the arm of a trainee who complained too much. Now this man stood before them. Xel raised an eyebrow. "Name?" He answered without blinking. "Dane." "Rank?" "None. I'm here to observe and assist." Xel frowned. "You have no rank, and you're here to assist us." He gave a small nod. The captain didn't like him, not because he was a man, but because he was calm. Too calm. "If you slow us down," she said, "you'll leave in a box." "Understood," Dane said. The squad laughed behind her. One of them, a tall warrior named Triss, muttered, "Hope we brought a small box." The rest of the day, no one spoke to him. Dane didn't try to make friends. He quietly followed the team, helped set up the camp, and cleaned his gear. When food was served, he ate alone. When the others trained, he watched silently. That night, the forest was still. They had landed on planet Keeler 9, a dense jungle world filled with strange creatures. Their mission was to remove a hidden enemy base deep inside the jungle. They would move at first light. As the squad slept, Dane stayed awake. He sat near the edge of camp, sharpening a small knife with smooth, quiet strokes. A low growl echoed from the trees. He didn't move. Another growl, closer now. Then, from the shadows, a beast appeared. 12 feet tall, 4 arms, eyes like glowing coals. Its mouth dripped with black slime. It moved fast, heading straight for the sleeping soldiers. But it never reached them. With a sudden motion, Dane moved like water, silent and precise. The beast lunged. He ducked, slid under it, and stabbed upward. Once, twice, 3 times. The creature roared in pain, then collapsed with a heavy thud. The noise woke the others. They ran out, weapons ready, but stopped. There stood Dane, calm as always, blood on his arms, his knife still in hand. The giant beast lay dead at his feet. No one spoke. Even Sale stared in silence. Dane looked at her and said only one thing: "Your perimeter is weak. Fix it." Then he walked past them and sat back down by the fire. Triss stared at the body. "How?" "He killed it. Alone." Another whispered. Sale knelt beside the creature, studying the wounds. Every strike was perfect. Clean. Deep. Not wild like a scared fighter. This was trained. Experienced. Deadly. She looked over at Dane. Something about him didn't fit. He didn't move like a soldier. Didn't talk like one. But his actions told a different story. Maybe Command hadn't sent him by mistake. Maybe they had sent him to test them. Sale stood up and spoke to the squad. "No more jokes, no more laughs. He stays, and we watch him closely." The others nodded, some still confused, some now curious. Dane cleaned his knife and put it away. He said nothing else that night. But in every tent, the same thought passed through each soldier's mind. Who is this man? And why does he seem more dangerous than all of them combined? The test in the jungle. The jungle breathed like a living thing. Thick vines hung from giant trees. Strange birds called out in low, haunting sounds. Fog drifted near the ground, hiding every step. The air smelled of wet moss and danger. Captain Sale stood on a cliff, watching her unit from above. Below her, the Crimson Daughters moved like shadows, silent, sharp, perfect. Every motion was trained, every breath controlled. And then there was him, Dane. He walked behind them, relaxed, too relaxed. No fear in his eyes, no weapon drawn, just a simple blade on his side and a light pack on his back. Exhale narrowed her eyes. She didn't like what she was seeing. He wasn't scared. He wasn't sweating. And that made her uneasy. He walks like the jungle belongs to him, Triss whispered beside her. Or maybe like he doesn't care if it kills him. Same thing, Sale said. It had been 2 days since the incident at the camp. Since Dane had killed the jungle beast with nothing but a small knife and steady hands. They hadn't asked him about it, and he hadn't explained. He just kept walking with them, calm, quiet, watching everything. Now they were deep in Killer 9's inner zone. Their real mission was still ahead, but Sale had something else in mind for today. A test. She tapped her comm. Unit halt. The soldiers stopped. Birds flew off from a nearby tree as if they, too, feared what was coming. Sale turned to her team. We split into 3 pairs. Take different paths through this sector. Meet again at the hill marked on your maps by sunset. Be fast. Be silent. Then she looked straight at Dane. You go alone. No one said a word. Not even him. He just gave a short nod. Sale didn't explain why she gave him the hardest task. She didn't need to. Everyone knew this was a test. A challenge. Maybe even a trap. Dane disappeared into the trees without a sound. How long before he gets lost? Someone whispered. Or eaten. Another added. They didn't know. But Sale was watching. And the jungle was waiting. Hours passed. The jungle changed. Light grew dim as clouds rolled in above the trees. A storm was coming. One soldier slipped in the mud. Another found signs of a predator's nest. Every team moved fast, trying to finish the course before darkness fell. But something was wrong. Team 2 didn't check in. Then, minutes later, a scream came through the comms. Ambush. I repeat, hostiles in the trees. Static. Zell's blood turned cold. This wasn't part of the mission. This wasn't part of the test. The jungle wasn't empty. It was occupied. Unknown forces were here, possibly the same ones they were sent to hunt, but earlier than planned. Zell called all teams. Retreat to the hill. Full speed. We regroup and defend. She ran with Triss, fast and silent. Her eyes scanned every tree, every shadow. Weapons up, minds focused. At the hill, only half the unit had arrived. The rest were missing. And the sun was already sinking. Thunder rolled in the distance. Zale looked around. No sign of Dane. Then, out of the mist, he appeared. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, 2 wounded soldiers limped forward, leaning on him for support. Blood on their armor. One had a deep gash across her back. The other was missing a helmet. Dane helped them both sit. Found them tied to a tree, he said. Someone wanted to use them as bait. You fought the enemy? Sale asked. No, Dane said. I hunted them. Exhale blinked. What does that mean? Dane sat down, calmly pulling a vine from his belt. On it, 6 small metal tags dangled. Each one from a different fighter. Not Crimson Daughters. Unknown soldiers. Enemies. Dead enemies. Triss walked over and picked up a tag. "These are from the Red Moon tribe," she said. "Mercenaries. No rules. They kill everything they touch." "Not today," Dane said. The unit stared. He had entered the most dangerous path alone. Found the missing team. Saved them. Fought off mercenaries. And walked back like it was just another day. Triss laughed once, quiet and cold. Then stepped forward. "I want to fight him," she said. Exhale raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I need to know," Triss said, "if he's better than me." Dane didn't argue. He stood up. The others made space. Triss cracked her neck, rolled her shoulders, and dropped her weapon. She didn't need one. She had trained her body for war since she was 12. She had defeated 23 opponents in hand combat. She was fast, brutal, and merciless. The fight began in silence. She struck first, fast, strong, aiming for his throat. He stepped aside. She turned, kicked, punched. Nothing hit. Dane didn't fight back. He just dodged. Then, in one smooth move, he caught her wrist, twisted gently, and dropped her to the ground. No pain, no violence, just control. She lay there, staring at the sky, breathing hard. Not because she was hurt, but because she understood. He could have ended it at any time. She stood up and bowed slightly. "You're not what I expected." Dane looked at her. "None of you are." Zale stepped forward, now finally curious. "So what are you, Dane?" He looked at the jungle around them, then at the squad, then at her, on what comes when war forgets its rules. She tried to break him. Rain poured like falling knives. Thick drops hit the metal roofs of the base. Mud turned to rivers. Boots splashed through water. The jungle howled with wind, as if warning them to stay inside. But Triss stood outside, waiting. Her armor was soaked, her hair tied back, her jaw tight with tension. Her eyes didn't blink. They were locked on the man standing across from her. Dane. He was calm again. Always calm. That annoyed her. 2 days had passed since he defeated her in front of the unit. He had barely touched her, a simple twist, a move so clean it felt like magic. But to Triss, it felt like shame. She had trained all her life. Her pride was built on victory. Now that pride was cracked. And she hated the feeling. So she challenged him again. Not with words. With silence. She waited in the rain, arms folded, until he stepped out of the camp tent and stood before her. Everyone else stayed under cover, watching, quiet, curious. Even Xale watched from the shadows. No one dared speak, not when a storm like this was building between warriors. Triss tossed a blade at his feet, simple, sharp. "This time," she said, "you fight me for real." Dane looked down at the blade, then looked up at her. "Why?" he asked. She didn't answer with words. She moved. Fast. Her fist struck at his chest, but it met air. He had already shifted. She spun, kicked, tried again. This time he blocked. Not hard. Not violent. Just enough. Like water meeting stone. She growled. "Stop holding back." He stepped back, silent again. She came at him with fury now. Blades flashing, boots crashing into mud, heart pounding. Her strikes were wild, angry, desperate. But everyone missed. Dane didn't fight like a man. He fought like a shadow. Then, in one perfect moment, he stepped forward, caught her foot mid-kick, and gently pushed her. She fell, hard, into the mud. Silence. She lay there, breathing heavy. The rain mixed with the mud on her face. She didn't get up. Not because she was hurt. Because something inside her broke. Not her body. Her pride. She had never lost twice. She had never felt so helpless. Dane knelt beside her. "You don't need to prove anything to me," he said softly. Triss looked at him with wet, angry eyes. "Then what do you want?" He stood again. And for the first time, He gave her a real answer. I want you to stop fighting like someone who hates herself. Those words hit harder than any punch. Triss turned away. She didn't speak again that night. But from that moment, something changed in her. Later that evening, the team gathered in the intel tent. Holograms lit up around them, maps of enemy movements, terrain scans, intercepted messages. Captain Sale spoke. The Red Moon mercenaries are gathering near the southern ridge. Too many to face head-on. We need a plan. Dane stepped forward and pointed at a thin path through the jungle. They expect a direct fight. We give them shadows instead. The team listened. He explained a silent route, one that would take them behind enemy lines. He spoke of sound traps made from leaves and rocks, of heat lures to draw enemies away, of illusions made with light and mirrors. Thale watched as her team leaned closer to listen. Even Triss sat quietly, nodding. Dane wasn't just strong. He was changing the way they thought. That night, Sale pulled Dane aside. Why do you fight like that? She asked. No rage, no pride, just stillness. Dane looked up at the stars. Because rage blinds, he said, and pride burns. I've seen too many warriors die with both in their hands. Sale studied him. You've been in more wars than you say. He didn't confirm it, didn't deny it, just said, wars leave marks, even when you can't see them. The next day, the mission began. The jungle swallowed them whole. Dane's plan worked like a ghost's whisper. The team moved through trees without a sound. Sound traps confused enemy scouts. Heat lures drew fire to empty hills. The Red Moon mercenaries never knew what hit them. By the time they realized, half their camp was already lost. The Crimson Daughters moved like shadows, fast and quiet, finishing the job. No casualties, no mess. It was the cleanest mission they had ever run. When they returned to base, no one cheered. They didn't need to. Their silence said everything. Dane sat by the fire that night, as always. Triss sat across from him. She didn't challenge him again. Instead, she passed him a drink. You were right, she said softly. He took the cup. About what? I've been fighting ghosts. He looked at her, and for the first time he smiled. We all do, he said. Betrayal in the dark. The sky turned black without warning. One moment, stars watched from above. The next, clouds swallowed them. A storm moved in fast, rolling like a beast across the jungle. Thunder cracked without rain. Lightning lit up the world in flashes. It felt like something was about to break. And something did. Inside the command tent, Captain Sale reviewed the next mission route. Her eyes were sharp, her face calm, but something gnawed at her thoughts. Every map she looked at felt wrong, like someone had moved pieces without her knowing. Behind her, Dane stood silently, watching the lights on the screen. He finally spoke. Your maps are fake. Sale turned. What? This route, he said, pointing, is a kill path. Ambush terrain, 2 choke points, 1 exit, and the enemy already knows it. Sale stepped closer. How do you know? Because I've used it before. That sentence made her skin crawl. Dane didn't blink. He added, someone inside your unit gave the enemy our plan. This isn't a mistake, it's betrayal. She stared at him. No one in her squad would do this. They were elite, loyal, untouchable. But, deep inside, something cracked in her trust. She nodded slowly. We'll test it, quietly. And they did. That night, while the storm raged louder outside, the team prepared for what they thought was a scouting mission. Triss walked next to Dane. Her arm brushed his by accident. She didn't move away. You think someone in our unit would betray us? She asked. Dane didn't answer at first. Then softly, I think people wear masks. Some forget they're even wearing one. Triss looked ahead, quiet now. They moved through the jungle like ghosts, following the exact path Dane had warned about. Exhale kept her team spaced out, her senses alert. Then it happened. Just as they reached the narrow valley, lights snapped on from the trees above. Dozens of red laser sights landed on them. Traps triggered. Explosives went off. But no one was caught. Why? Because they hadn't followed the full route. They had set up a mirror team to take the path instead. A small group of drones made to look like soldiers. The trap caught only machines, but the enemy didn't know that. Gunfire erupted anyway. Dane and Sale watched from a cliff, looking down at the chaos. Sale's voice was cold. "You were right." Dane didn't answer. His eyes weren't on the battlefield. They were on the gear left behind, back at camp. When they returned, something was missing. Dane's pack had been opened. His knife, gone. Only one person had touched it. Private Lara, a quiet soldier, always respectful, always silent. Too silent. Sale ordered her brought to the briefing room. But she was gone. Her tent empty. Her gear missing. And one of the perimeter turrets had been turned off. They spread out quickly. A search team swept the jungle. Triss led the group, half furious, half betrayed. She had once trained with Lara, had even shared rations with her. It felt like poison in her gut now. They found Lara near the waterfall caves, wounded, bleeding from the leg. She had tried to escape, but something stopped her. Something not human. She lay on the ground, gasping. Dane stepped forward, slow. "Why?" he asked. She looked up at him, pain in her eyes. "Because I was tired of following orders that led nowhere. Tired of being cannon fodder." "So you sold us?" Triss growled. "No," Lara spat. "I survived. Red Moon offered freedom, power, a way out." Sale knelt beside her. "You betrayed your sisters." "No," Lara whispered. "I betrayed the lie." She coughed. Blood stained her lips. Dane looked at her for a long moment, then turned away. "She's not the only one." Sale stood. "What do you mean?" He looked toward the jungle again. She was a message. That night, Dane sat alone. He sharpened a replacement blade slowly, the motion calm, precise. Triss joined him, this time not with anger, but confusion. "What did you mean?" She was a message. Dane looked at her. "The enemy wanted us to know they're close, that they can reach us, that they're not afraid." "And you?" she asked. "I never fight fear," he said. "I use it." The next morning, a message was found burned into the earth outside their base. Words carved deep with heat. "You have a ghost among you. We want him back." Sale read the message, then looked at Dane. "What did you use to be?" she asked. Dane stared at the words, then whispered, "Their teacher." Inside the war tent, the team fell into silence. Dane stepped into the center and told them the truth. Before he ever joined the Crimson Daughters, he had trained a small group of deadly mercenaries, years ago. The Red Moon elites. He had taught them how to move like shadows, how to fight without noise, how to kill without anger. Then they changed. They used what he taught for power, for destruction, for fear. So he left, and they never forgave him. Now, they wanted him back, or dead. Triss stood slowly. "You trained our enemy." He nodded once. "I did." No one moved. Then Sale spoke. "Then you're the only one who can stop them." No one argued. No one doubted. Not anymore. Not after the jungle. Not after the storm. And not after betrayal showed its face in the dark. Betrayal in the dark. The jungle was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that pressed against the skin and whispered in the ear, "Something is wrong." Captain Sale felt it first, not in the trees, not in the wind, but deep in her bones. The stillness felt fake, as if someone had turned down the volume of the world to hide a sound they didn't want heard. She scanned the camp. It was evening. just after sunset. The Crimson Daughters were finishing drills. Triss ran combat training with 2 newer soldiers. One worked on sensors. Another checked the perimeter. Everything looked normal. But something didn't feel normal. Then she noticed it. Dane wasn't in sight. He was never loud, never one to make noise or stand out. But his presence always carried weight. When he walked into a room, people shifted. When he sat down, silence followed. Now, he was just gone. Hazael tapped her calm. "Where's Dane?" Static. She frowned. "Anyone see Dane in the last 20 minutes?" Triss answered first. "He said he was going to clean his gear by the ridge." Zell's fingers tightened. The ridge had no cover. It was exposed. No one trained there. No one should be there. She moved quickly, but not alone. Triss followed her. And so did Sergeant Rael, the oldest in the squad. Together, they reached the ridge and froze. Dane was there, sitting cross-legged in the grass, his weapons stripped apart in front of him. But his eyes weren't on his gear. They were on something in the distance, something Hazael and the others couldn't yet see. "Dane," Hazael said, voice low. "What are you watching?" He didn't turn. He just pointed. They followed his hand and saw it. A blinking red light. Small, buried half in dirt. A tracking beacon. Triss cursed under her breath. "Someone tagged us." "Not us," Dane said. "Me." Hazael stepped closer. "You're being hunted." Dane nodded slowly. "They know where I am. They've known for days. They just didn't attack because they wanted one thing." "What?" He looked up at her, his eyes calm. "To remind me I can't escape who I was." Before she could speak again, an explosion rocked the eastern perimeter. The camp lit up in fire and smoke. Alarms screamed. And Hazael's blood turned to ice. "We're under attack." The Crimson Daughters snapped into action. Weapons drawn. Positions taken. Drones in the air. Defensive lines set. But the enemy didn't storm in. They were smarter. Red Moon mercenaries used tricks. They knew the jungle. They used fake sounds, holograms, and scent bombs. Soldiers moved to fight, then found nothing. They turned back, and 3 were already missing. It was chaos. And the worst part, no entry point, no breach, no tracks. The enemy had walked through their camp like ghosts. Dane moved differently. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He walked straight to the storage unit and checked a box no one had touched in months. It was open. Inside, wires, explosives, emergency location maps. Gone. He turned to Hazael. "They're not just attacking. They've been inside." She stared at him. "What do you mean?" He pointed at the storage box, then said 3 words that made everyone freeze. Someone helped them. The next morning, the fires were out. 2 soldiers were dead. 1 was still missing. And the squad was quiet. Dane stood at the edge of the cliff, watching smoke rise from the trees. Hazael walked up beside him. "I checked the logs. One of our own disabled a sensor. The same one that failed during the breach." "Who?" Hazael didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "Lara." Dane nodded. He didn't look surprised. Just sad. "She was watching me," he said. "I felt it 3 days ago." "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to believe she wouldn't." They found Lara near the water tunnels, bleeding. A wound across her side, self-inflicted. She had tried to run. She had failed. Triss, Hazael, and Dane stood over her. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She just smiled. "You can't kill what's already broken," she said. Hazael stepped forward. "Why?" Lara looked at Dane. "I was one of yours." Triss gasped. Dane said nothing. Hazael looked at him, furious now. "You knew her?" Dane nodded slowly. "She trained under me. 3 years ago. then disappeared. Lara laughed bitterly. "You left us," she said. "You taught us everything, then abandoned us. You said we could be more. Then you ran." "I saw what you became," Dane said. "We became free," Lara spat. "We stopped following orders that killed us. We stopped dying for people like you." Dane's voice was steady. "You started killing for money." She didn't deny it, just looked up at the sky and whispered, "I would have followed you anywhere, but you turned your back." That's when Dane did something no one expected. He knelt beside her, not to punish her, but to ask her a question. "What do they want with me?" Lara's smile faded. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and said, "They don't want you back, Dane. They want to destroy the man you've become. They want to make you a monster again." And then she died. Quietly. No fear. Just a soft breath. And silence. Back at camp, the unit stood in shock. They had lost one of their own, not just to death, but to corruption. Captain Sale called a meeting. She didn't speak like a leader that night. She spoke like someone who had just watched her family crack in front of her. "I used to think loyalty made us strong," she said, "but maybe we need more than that." She looked at Dane, and for the first time, asked, "What do we do now?" He stood slowly, eyes scanning the faces around him. He didn't give a speech. He just said, "We do what they never expect. We hunt them back." The human strategy. The camp was different now, quieter. Not because the jungle was silent, but because something had shifted inside the Crimson Daughters. They had lost one of their own, not in battle, but to betrayal. And that wound cut deeper than any blade. Captain Sale stood alone under the jungle sky, staring at the smoke trails left by Lara's funeral fire. Her fingers were tight behind her back, her jaw clenched. She had trained her whole life for war. But this was different. The enemy wasn't just outside the walls anymore. It had walked among them, and it had left a scar. Behind her, footsteps approached. Light. Precise. Only one person walked like that. Dane. He stopped beside her and said nothing. For a while, they just stood there, watching the smoke. Then Sale finally asked, "How do we fight them?" Dane didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet, focused. "We don't." Sale turned to him sharply. "What?" He looked at her. "We don't fight them. Not the way they expect. They know our patterns. They know your tactics. They know everything we're trained to do. So we give them something new." "What's new?" she asked. "Me." That night, the team gathered in the war tent. The room buzzed with tension. No one was laughing. No one was relaxed. Triss stood near the corner, arms crossed, still guarding her heart. Dane stepped forward and cleared the center table. Then he dropped a map on it, hand-drawn, rough, filled with strange lines and symbols. "This," he said, "is how we beat them." Kale leaned in. The map showed not a direct route, but circles, loops, illusions. "This isn't a mission," Triss said, squinting. "It's a game." Dane nodded. "Exactly. War is a game of minds. And Red Moon only knows how to fight one way, straight and loud. They've forgotten how to think." He pointed at the symbols. "We use their hunger, their pride, their need to win." "How?" "We split into false teams. We leave trails, clear ones. We let them chase shadows. We pull them into their own traps. We set bombs in old battlegrounds. We feed them lies, and we make them question their own moves." Rael raised an eyebrow. "You want to fight them with confusion." Dane looked at her. "No, I want them to fight themselves." The plan was risky. It went against every rule Xel had ever trained by. But that was exactly the point. She approved it. And the next day, it began. The first team moved east. Their tracks were wide, messy, Obvious. They wanted Red Moon to follow. They dropped empty supply crates, made accidental radio calls. One soldier even faked an injury on open comms. Red Moon swallowed the bait. Hard. But when they reached the supposed camp, it exploded. A trap. Then, more signs led them north. More trails. More noise. But every location was empty. Every fire was cold. Every gunpoint was already gone. Red Moon grew angry. Sloppy. They started splitting up. And that was their second mistake. Because Dane had planned for that too. The jungle changed. Old mines were rearmed. Water paths were poisoned. Trees were carved with symbols from old warrior legends, meant to shake the mind. And one by one, Red Moon soldiers began to vanish. Not because the Crimson Daughters were faster, but because they were smarter. Dane taught them how to move like ghosts, how to use sounds to draw fire, how to make it look like they were everywhere. But in truth, they were nowhere. They were simply watching, waiting, and choosing when to strike. One night, Triss and Dane hid in the canopy above a small clearing. Below, 2 Red Moon scouts sat, arguing. "We've lost 12, one said. "Something's wrong." "They're just lucky," the other growled. "No, this isn't luck. This is design." Dane didn't smile. But Triss did. Not because she liked killing, but because for the first time she saw what real strategy looked like. It wasn't strength. It was control. And Dane had it. Back at camp, Sale listened to intercepted comms. Red Moon was in disarray. They blamed each other. Commanders shouted over weak signals. Some accused their own spies of betrayal. Others said ghosts haunted the jungle. She turned to Dane. "They think we're magic." He shook his head. "We're not magic. We're just patient." Then came the final stage. Dane marked one last spot on the map. An abandoned outpost, from a war long forgotten. He called it the Endgame. Red Moon would think it was their chance to strike. They'd gather there in numbers, expecting a final battle. But Dane had turned the whole outpost into a mirror. Walls made of reflective alloys. Speakers hidden inside. Heat signatures faked using old power cells. When Red Moon arrived, they saw dozens of Crimson soldiers. All fakes. They fired. They charged. They stormed the buildings. And fell into the traps. Gas. EMP bombs. Shock fields. One by one, they collapsed. And when the real Crimson Daughters stepped out of the shadows, the enemy didn't even fight. They surrendered. They were broken, not in body, but in mind. After the mission, the team gathered by the fire. No one cheered. No one danced. They just sat, letting the silence hold them. The war wasn't over. But something important had happened. Something deep. They had become more than a team. They had become a mind. Dane sat quietly. Triss walked over, holding a cup of warm root water. She handed it to him. "You didn't just save us," she said. "You changed us." Dane looked up at her. "No," he said. "You were always capable. You just needed to stop thinking like soldiers and start thinking like hunters." Sale stepped forward then, her armor off, her eyes tired but alive. She nodded once, not just as a captain, but as someone who had learned something new. "We follow your lead now," she said, and for the first time since he arrived. Dane didn't say no. The captain's weakness. The rain didn't stop. It fell for 2 days straight. Cold, endless, like the sky itself was mourning something it hadn't told the world yet. The jungle turned to rivers. Trees bent under the weight of water. Mud swallowed boots. Vision was cut short. And every sound, every footstep, every breath was drowned in the noise. It was on the second day that Captain Sale collapsed. No warning. No wound. Just silence. And then her knees hit the ground. Her soldiers rushed to her side. "Captain, she's burning up." Dane pushed through the crowd. He knelt beside her, touched her neck, her pulse. Her body was cold, but her skin was hot. Too hot. Her breath was shallow. Her eyes rolled slightly. Unfocused. "Fever," he said. "And something else." He pulled a scanner from his pouch and checked her vitals. The numbers blinked red. Then he saw it. A small wound near her collarbone. No blood. Just a tiny dark dot. Like a needle prick. "Poison," he whispered. Triss froze. "From when?" "Must have been during the last raid," Dane said. She didn't notice. "This kind, it works slow. It hides in the body." The squad looked at one another. They had faced death before, but not like this. Not helpless. They brought Sale to the temporary shelter they had built in the hills. It was a half-broken bunker from an old war, filled with cracked metal and faded warning signs. But it had cover, dry ground, and protection from jungle creatures. Dane stayed by her side. He opened a small case from his private gear. Inside, vials, herbs, crushed roots, small instruments, none of them standard military issue. Triss watched from the doorway. "What are those?" she asked. Dane answered without looking up. "Earth medicine. Old stuff. Older than war," he said. "Older than me." Sale drifted in and out of fever dreams. Sometimes she whispered words that didn't make sense. Sometimes she reached for weapons that weren't there. Once, she gripped Dane's arm and gasped, "Don't let them see me like this." He didn't answer. He just placed a cool cloth on her forehead and stayed close. Triss returned a few hours later with boiled water and dried fruits. "She won't eat," Dane said. "What do we do?" He looked at her, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. "If I fail," he said, "she dies by sunrise." Triss stared at him. She had never seen fear on his face before. But now, there was a shadow there. Not fear of failure. Fear of loss. Night fell. The rain grew heavier. Lightning flashed across the sky. Dane sat alone beside Sale, preparing a final mix. 3 drops of nitrate. 1 crushed flameberry seed. Boiled together and cooled over stone. He held the cup to her lips. She didn't drink. Her head turned away. He took a breath. Then, gently, he spoke. "Sale, you told me once that pride keeps you standing. But right now, it's killing you." She didn't respond. So he told her something no one else knew. Not Triss. Not even Lara before she died. "I wasn't always like this," he whispered. "I wasn't always calm. I wasn't always in control." He looked down at the cup, then at the woman he'd come to respect more than most. "There was a time when I let anger guide every step, when my heart burned every second of the day. I trained killers because I thought rage gave power. I was wrong." The rain softened for just a moment. "And in that quiet," he said, "a girl saved me. A girl from a burned-down village. She had nothing, but she gave me water. She smiled at a man with blood on his hands, and she said, 'You can still come back.' I believed her. I believed I could be better." His voice cracked, just once. "And now I'm asking you, Sale, come back." She stirred, just slightly. He lifted the cup again. This time, her lips moved. She drank, and the room held its breath. An hour passed. Then 2. She slept deeper now. Her skin began to cool, and her breathing slowed. Triss returned, soaked from patrol. She walked in, her eyes tired. "How is she?" Dane looked at her. "Alive." And for the first time in days, Triss smiled. When Sale woke the next morning, the storm was gone. The sky was pale and quiet. She turned her head slowly and saw Dane sitting nearby, sharpening his blade with a calm rhythm. "You didn't sleep," she said, her voice rough. "You didn't die," he replied. She coughed, then smiled. "That's a fair trade." She tried to sit up, but stopped as pain hit her chest. Dane stood and helped her gently. No words, just quiet strength. Zale looked into his eyes, and finally asked something she had never dared. "What are you really, Dane?" He didn't answer right away. Then softly, "Not a hero, not a monster, just a man trying to leave the fire behind." Outside the shelter, the Crimson Daughters waited. When Zale stepped out, weak but standing, they saluted. She waved it off. "Don't salute me," she said. "Salute him." They turned to Dane, and for the first time, without orders, without hesitation, they saluted the only man in their unit. Not as a guest, not as a test, but as one of them. That night, the stars came out for the first time in a week. Dane sat with Zale and Triss beside a quiet fire. The jungle was calm again. Triss looked at Zale. "You scared us." Zale smiled weakly. "I scared myself." Dane tossed another stick into the flames. "You don't always have to be strong," he said. Zale looked at him. "And you don't always have to be alone." He didn't answer, but the way he looked at the fire, she knew he had heard her. The final battle. He leads them. The message came at dawn, not through comms, not through satellites. It came through fire. A trail of explosions led from the northern trees to the edge of the Crimson Daughters' camp, burning symbols into the earth. A message written in flame. "We are coming for the ghost." And this time, they were bringing everything. The full force of Red Moon mercenaries, elite squads, heavy weapons, hunters trained by Dane himself, those he had left behind long ago. Now they wanted his blood, and anyone who stood with him. Captain Zale stood tall, armor secured, though her body still felt weak. She looked at her unit. No one flinched. No one asked questions. Even after all they'd lost, all they'd seen, they stood ready. But when she looked at Dane, she didn't see calm. She saw something else, something deeper. Not fear, not even anger. Something like sadness. She stepped close to him. "We'll follow your lead." He didn't answer. Not yet. Inside the war tent, the plan formed slowly. Red Moon's forces were bigger, better equipped, and closer than expected. Retreat was impossible. Survival was uncertain. But Dane laid out a path. Not a perfect one, not a safe one, but a true one. "We don't run," he said. "We don't wait. We pull them in. We break them from the inside." Triss frowned. "You mean, let them in the walls?" Dane nodded. "This camp was built for defense, but that's not how we win." He looked each soldier in the eye. "We let them come close. We give them what they want, and then we show them we are not what they trained for." The preparation took hours. Old tunnels under the base were cleared. Mirror traps placed in the trees. Sensor bombs buried beneath soft soil. Energy weapons charged in hidden batteries. The base became a giant puzzle, one only Dane understood fully. When the sun set, the jungle fell silent. No wind, no rain, just stillness. And then, the ground began to shake. The first wave came loud. Gunships above. Drones buzzing like angry insects. Red Moon troops in black and silver, faces painted, weapons raised. They charged with screams and fire. The Crimson Daughters didn't flinch. They waited until the signal. Dane stood at the center of camp, alone. And when the lead gunship dropped close enough, he looked up, lifted one hand, and snapped his fingers. The sky exploded. EMP mines sent bursts into the air. Blinding drones, crashing ships, flame lines tore through trees, splitting enemy squads. And from beneath the earth, Crimson Daughters rose from hidden tunnels, silent and deadly. The first wave was crushed, but that was only the beginning. The second wave was smarter, faster, led by Red Moon captains trained in Dane's own hand-to-hand style. They didn't fall for traps. They moved like shadows, but Dane knew how they thought. He knew the cracks in their rhythm. And when one of them stepped into the war tent, believing Dane would be there alone, he was. But he wasn't unprepared. They fought in silence. No words, no shouting, just breath, movement, steel. In less than 30 seconds, Dane dropped him. Triss found him minutes later, standing over the Red Moon captain's body, breathing slow. She said nothing. She just nodded. And together, they moved back into the storm. Captain Sale led the perimeter defense, despite her recovering body. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. Sector 3, push left. Sergeant, double shield wall. They were tired, outnumbered, but they held. Not because of orders, but because of faith. Not just in Sale, not just in each other, but in him. Dane wasn't behind the lines anymore. He was in front, leading charges, setting traps mid-battle, lifting wounded onto shoulders, fighting side by side with soldiers who once laughed at the idea of a man in their unit. Now they would have followed him into fire. And they did. The final wave was personal. Red Moon's true leader entered the battlefield. She was tall, scared, wearing armor made from the bones of beasts. She had once been Dane's top student. Now she was his worst enemy. She walked straight through the outer wall, cutting down soldiers like paper. "Dane," she shouted, "show yourself, traitor." And he did. He stepped into the light. No armor, no helmet, just him and the sword she once helped him forge. The soldiers stopped. The battle paused. Two warriors faced each other, once master and student, now opposites. She charged. He didn't move, not until the last second. Then steel met steel. Fury met calm. She fought like fire. He fought like still water. And in the end, she fell. Not killed, just defeated. He knelt beside her and whispered, "You became everything we said we'd never be." She spat blood. But she didn't argue, because he was right. The battlefield quieted by morning. Smoke rose from craters. The dead were counted, and the living stood together, bruised, but not broken. The Crimson Daughters had won, not because they were the strongest, but because they changed. They adapted, and they followed a ghost who became a leader. Later, as the sun climbed above the jungle trees, Captain Sale stood before her squad. She looked at Dane, then spoke loud and clear. "From this day on, the Crimson Daughters are no longer daughters alone." She looked at her team. "We are warriors, united by choice, not birth." And she turned to Dane. "You came here as an outsider, as a test, maybe even as a mistake. But today, you stand as one of us." She raised her fist. The others followed. And in that moment, Dane, quiet, calm, distant, finally smiled. Not because he had won, but because he had come home.